Welcome to Warcraft Reloaded, a podcast brought to you by Mash Those Buttons, covering World of Warcraft Classic and its community. I am Bobby, also known as Blazin' Bob, and as always, I'm joined by Mel, aka Melarina. How you doing?
Hi, I'm good. I'm back 2 weeks in a row, like a trend.
I know. You're like, you're becoming a reoccurring guest once again, right?
Yeah, I try.
And joining us once again, TableSlam. How you doing?
Hey, what's up, Bobby and Mel? Doing pretty good. Feeling good, especially after the last couple of days.
I bet. We're gonna have a lot of fun talking about that. And after a long hiatus, we have Rugs back on. How you doing, brother?
I'm good, dude. Thanks for having me again. It's been way too long. I love you. I missed you. Happy to be here.
Happy to have you. Also, I owe you a big thank you because I've wanted to guest on Classic Life forever, and you weren't able to go. So I was an emergency guest, and I got to go on Classic Life, and got to knock that off the bucket list.
Well, of course. I mean, I guess I'll just miss the show every time, and you can just take my spot. That works for me.
Oh man! All right. Well, I want to start off the show by thanking our tank patrons in Thick Lizzie, Croxford, Braxton, and Turtle Whale. I want to remind everybody we stream the show live on Twitch, twitch.tv/BlazinBob, BlazinBob. We did not have any voicemails this week. Remember, the number is 816-866-1066. Or go to speakpipe.com/Warcraft Reloaded. First off, we're going to go over what we've been doing. Then we're going to hit a couple news things. And then we're going to talk Feral Druids. We're going to talk all about the new #1 DPS in the game. So, yeah, stay tuned for that. With that being said, let's jump right in. What have you guys been doing? Who wants to go first?
I'll go first. I mean, I basically just said it before we started the pod. I got a new Prot Warrior up. So this is, it almost feels illegal.
Sorry, I had to. He's joined the club, guys.
I feel dirty. It feels really weird. I almost feel like I shouldn't be allowed to play the class at all, that the class should just be grayed out of my character select screen after all the things I said about it. But honestly, it's hilarious. Like, I just embrace the meme of playing the class, and it is fun. It's genuinely fun. As long as you're not dead, it actually feels really, really good.
Surprising amount of damage, too.
Surprising amount of damage. Hell, the quality of life having Shockwave feels good.
Shockwave does feel good in a lot of situations. Like Freya. The ads come out, you're on 10-man solo tanking, stun them easy as pie, or even if you're not, stun them for your paladin, so they have an easier time grabbing. I mean, there's just so much utility for it.
It's weird because, like, I am so anti-Prot Warrior that some of the Prot Warrior utility feels like very, very fresh and new to me. Like, I don't have a raid group that uses Vigilance, so using Vigilance at all feels like a brand new ability that was just added to the game because it's been so insanely foreign, and same with Shockwave and whatnot. Mm-hmm. Now, of course, like missing Ardent Defender and DSAC
is huge. I mean, yeah, basically Ardent Defender and DSAC are just like, hands down, that's why the Paladin is a better tank,
Yeah. But no, other than the fun little Prot Warrior ult I got now, my main got buffed. So that's kind of cool. That's kind of neat. Well, I'm sure we'll talk plenty about that later, but that's all.
All right. What about you, TableSlam? You still been going crazy on hardcore?
Yeah, actually, I make the joke now that I'm an era hardcore main, and I play Wrath in my off time because, like, I've literally I've been raid logging in Wrath and just playing hardcore. I'm participating in that dungeon speedrun tournament, so I've been.
Are you still alive?
Oh yeah, level 43. Been turbo sweating the leatherworking because I'm one of like 4 people that picked leatherworking instead of alchemy or engineering. So I'm like, well, if I pick this, I have to turbo sweat it. So like half my gear is actually crafted. I crafted my wolf's head at level 41.
Nice.
I've been doing some crafting gamba on the wild leather pieces because they can roll random stats. So I've been like I stopped questing at level 36 and I've literally just grinded trolls and beasts all the way to 43.
Oh god.
Trying to get mats to craft stuff. So it's been fun.
Yeah.
That does not sound fun.
Well,
Rex, how much do you know about hardcore? Because it's basically self-made. What's that self-made?
Solo self-found.
Yeah.
So it's like you can't use the auction house or the mailbox. No trading with other players. You can only run every dungeon one time. And everything that you obtain for your character has to be either crafted yourself, gotten from a vendor, or like a quest reward or a drop. So you can't get items from other players. You have to get everything yourself. If your character didn't earn the piece of gear or the item, then you can't use it.
Yeah, so drops, like, it changes the game, Brugs, because you'll have a green drop and you'll be like, yes! Oh, you know?
Or like even bags, dude.
Bags early on, you're like, oh my God, this is huge. Yeah, and then trading skills, you're like, which is the most important to me right now?
Yeah, like what can I didn't train Starfire because I was like, I'm not gonna cast that.
Dude, the first time I did hardcore on my priest, I trained resurrection and I was like, no, why did I do that?
Literally worthless.
At a certain point, I had like just enough kind of spare because like right now the meta is unironically fishing. Like
because you get greens, right?
Yeah, like you cap out, and like we're at the current like level cap for the circuit that we're about to do is level 43. So like it's the last level where like the gear that you fish up out of like the Mithril bound trunks is actually going to be useful because everything past that is not going to be an upgrade anymore. So like you just fish and hope you get some gear, and then anything you don't need you use a vendor. So like I bought my mount at 41 also. I've respec'd 3 times already, like because I keep going back and forth between Feral and Resto for the circuit. I have Feral for level and I'm Resto for the circuit. So like I need gold to be able to respec. My next respec is going to cost me like 25 gold already. I'm level 43. So like I've just been farming gold from fishing basically. And it's like, it's unironically the meta for like getting money and stuff. And like engineers have to fish because they need leather for target dummies, you know, stuff like that. It's kind of wild.
That's pretty badass.
Yeah, there's all kinds. It's a whole different world. But yeah,
and of course, the end goal is to not die. You have to do the whole thing without dying. If you die, you have to delete your character and start over.
So yeah, I think like the one thing I hate the most about me personally doing hardcore is I hate leveling. Always have, always will. I hate questing. That journey to me is not fun. It's a speed bump. It's a detour from what I want to do. So I've always hated it. But I mean, I like watching it, and I definitely like watching people die. I think that's hilarious because I'm a rager. If I died, like I would have probably destroyed my computer. So it's funny for me to watch someone else do it.
I've had some times where I wasn't proud of the way I acted on stream after we died. Like I was very mean to Mel. I don't know what the word is for it. I didn't yell at her or anything, but I was very put out, obviously, on the stream about it. And it's funny, but yeah, it's weird, Rugs, because
his fault. Like, let's be honest. So
until I played hardcore, I didn't like leveling at all. I mean, at all. Mel, like I said it on the show a billion times. And like hardcore actually made it fun to level, which makes no sense. I can't explain it.
Leveling's the challenge.
And I told everybody
that's the difference. Is like in original hardcore, it's not like you were leveling to do an end game. Like leveling was the end game, right? It was like you were trying to get to 60 without dying. So that was the game. And I think that's why it was more enjoyable, is because. And you couldn't make yourself super overpowered, so things weren't easy, right?
Yeah, I wasn't in a rush to get anywhere.
Yeah, like the goal was just to stay alive, and so as long as you did that, you were winning. And
yeah, 100%.
Yeah, it is really weird. But you're doing the same thing I did, Table. When I found hardcore and finally tried it, it sucked me in immediately, and I raid logged TBC for 4 months. and like just played hardcore all day, every day, died a whole bunch. Finally got 2 characters just to 60, but hardcore will be there later. That's the way I feel about it. And Wrath, I don't know if it will. And I'm just enjoying my favorite expansion ever and trying to raid and do as much as I possibly can in Wrath while it's here.
Yeah.
So.
I feel like next time Ruggs is on the show, he's going to have a prot pally in hardcore at level 60 or something, right? Like, or a prot warrior in hardcore at level 60 and just complete the circle here, you know?
It seems like it eventually pulls everybody in, because we had people on, we had Duranosaur and Winky on multiple times, and I was like, yeah, I love watching you guys do it, but yeah, it's just not for me. I'm never going to do it, guys. And then I try it, and I'm like sucked in, and I'm like, okay, I was wrong. And even Josh Corbett, who's talked shit on it a million times, is now doing it, I hear. Oh, so it's just hilarious.
Everybody's trying it out, man. Like
It
a
just
bunch of
sounds painful.
big names. It is painful, but it's like
It is.
It's weird. It's like it's when you die. Like my first hardcore character, I got him to level 27, and I thought I was doing real good. I got cocky and whatever, died, and I was like, immediately, I was like, well, shit, that can't be how it ends. So I went again, and that's kind of like as soon like the first time you almost die but survive, that like adrenaline spike is kind of like what gets you hooked. But like the literally like word for word exactly what you said about leveling, Rugs, is exactly how I used to feel about leveling. I hated it. I hated leveling alts. Like I only ever did it because like I felt like I had to. Like I would level alts for like professions and stuff so I could like supply my main with stuff. And I would stop as soon as it was possible to stop. Like I got a character to 35 for like the max level trade skills in TBC, stopped him at 35, didn't touch him anymore. He was my professional alt. And then in hardcore, it was like there's no end game really. Like there are people that raid hardcore, and like if they die in the raid, they delete their character and stuff. People do that. But like the actual point of it is to get to 60. So since there's not really like, yes, you could try and like get into the raids or whatever, but if you're not interested in doing that, then leveling is the entire game. So it's like, it's a different experience. And like, there's certain things that you would not normally do or not normally care about that like all of a sudden you do, or you have to care about because like, otherwise you're going to die. So I don't know. It's just a different way to look at the game, really. Like there's the way that we played in Wrath right now, which is like you're there to raid, you're there to compete, you're there to parse whatever you're trying to get out of the game. Leveling isn't a huge part of Wrath right now, but in hardcore, leveling is the entire game. It's just a different mindset. That's all.
Yeah, and dude, I'll give you this one for free. One of the coolest things I did for my stream is I have a smartwatch. I got a Twitch thing that puts my heart rate on stream, so you can see like my heart spike when I'm about to die at different times. And when things are scary, it's crazy cool. So just telling you, stream usually likes that quite a bit. And it wasn't my idea. I stole it completely from Grays for Days, but I saw it and I was like, I need that now. Like I saw it.
Okay, I might give it a go. You guys are kind of convincing me. Just before we go too much into a tangent, just tell me real quick, what are like the actual like best classes for leveling in hardcore? Top 3.
Probably mage. Mage is one of them for sure.
Priest
is really strong. Yep.
Warlock.
And I would say
Hunter definitely.
Warlock. Pet classes, basically, you could just lump them together. Pet classes, priests, especially because like if you go enchanting, you get a wand early, and like priests literally just wand, shield themselves, and shadow word pain. You can pull like 8 things, you're fine.
Yeah, and have so many early get out of jail free cards on the priest too.
And then like paladin deserves a special mention because of bubble. Like you literally like once you get the high enough level bubble, you can bubble and just run and like not care about anything, and whatever mobs are on you will leash before and reset before bubble ends. Like it's just once every hour a free escape from death button.
One of the rules though is no bubble hearth.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you are allowed to what's it called? What's that? The one you get one potion. Is it Gift of Elude or Light of Elude?
Light of Elude. No, they actually disabled that too now. So no bubble hearth, no Light of Elude hearth anymore.
You used to get one, like so you do that quest and you were allowed to like do that once, and if you had made a macro, you could actually get the hearth off before it ran out. But oh well, interesting. So they got rid of that. I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
Like Was
Yeah,
a-
that
Honestly,
definitely-
the best class you can play, to be honest, is just the class that you're the best at.
True.
Because
very
the one
true.
you're most
knowing
comfortable on.
knowing how to play that class is probably more important than what get out of jail free cards you have, you know?
Once you get cat as a druid, I freaking loved hardcore because you have so many tools. And you could keep a caster set, and even as feral, you could still solo a bunch of like elite level quests because you could just kite.
Yeah, just root kite. If you can root it, you can kill it.
Yeah, there was just a lot of cool stuff, man.
It's fun though. Like I've played mostly druids, and yeah, once you get cat, there's I don't know if it has a name or anything, but there is like an effect. Like once druids get to 20, all of a sudden they get overconfident, and a bunch of druids die at 20 because they're like, oh, I do so much more damage now. I can probably pull a couple things. Like, nah, dude, you still don't have any cleave.
Yeah,
You're taking double
also
damage.
forget how squishy cat is in the beginning, right? Like,
because you go bear like until before 20, like you use like a wrath to pull, maybe a moonfire, and then you go bear, finish the pull, regen, pull another thing in bear, and then by the time the second thing is done, you have enough mana to like recycle, like do the whole thing again. So like you take so much less damage as bear. Then when you 20, you get cat, you're trying to pull in the same way, but you took way more damage. So you have to use some of your mana on healing. It's like, nah, dude, just stay cat, just pop out, regrowth, healing touch, you're fine.
Yeah. I got really pissed when I got my druid cat form for the first time. So I'd been working up a bunch of rogues, and like the chance to miss dual wielding, like just makes the rogue do so much less damage at lower levels than the druid. And I was just like, this is bullshit. I'm killing these things so much faster than my rogue does.
Yeah, because we technically don't dual wield. We just attack really fast.
Yep. So you only have the 8% chance to miss, and so it's big.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun though. That's been taking up most of my time. But recently, the guild that I was in on Pagel folded, so I transferred to Mankrik and went Horde to raid with Classic Go in his guild, and that's also where Scotty J and Mincy are playing on NA. So.
Nice.
Playing with those guys has been a lot of fun, but big shout out to Go for basically getting me in the door with that one.
Yep,
and also big shout out to their old feral who stopped playing. So
worked out for you.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. All right, Mel, what have you been up to?
Oh, just raiding. Been raiding on my priest and my paladin. That's about it. I don't think I've gotten. Oh, I did get, maybe I had this last week, but I got Constellus on my priest.
Yep, congrats.
Just pretty exciting. Because I'm definitely not getting Valinir. It's fine. I'm not bitter. But now, I feel, now that our Pally has Valinir, it's like, there's all these like cooler looking shields now on everybody. And I'm like, God damn it. Come on. I'm the shielder. Like, don't be trying to take my job over here.
Even the icon is pretty.
Yeah, like the actual like shield on the people. Like now everybody's just in this like circular bubble of like glory, and I'm like, here you go.
Forgetting they've been getting power shields
the
whole time. They're like, oh my god, we have a shield now.
Yeah, right.
What do you mean now?
Yep, this is funny.
I love it when people will be like, yeah, Mel, could you make sure that people are shielded at this time? And I'm like, what do you think I do? Like, I literally, that's just all I do is shield people. Like, there's no time where I'm not shielding people, to be honest, unless we're on like Iron Council and I'm penancing the tank. But like, that's pretty much it. And then I'm still shielding people.
Yep. Well, for me, I've been raiding on main rogue and the main prop warrior, and then I've been also raiding and doing. I'll put a link in the chat for it, guys. But Harskar, our raid leader, has started a normally Friday night DKP service, and starting out, it's all normals. So you'd want to bring in probably like like a newer alt, but yeah, if you guys are interested, I will have that Discord server in the show notes for you guys. But yeah, my rogue's been extremely lucky. I had the God run last week. Went with, I don't know if you know Nick, he's a DK in Fusion rugs.
Nicator, I think.
What his DK is just named Nick, I think.
Okay, I'm not sure I know him.
But yeah, he has an alt and came and started raiding with our casual raid on the weekends, and he invited me to a 10-man. I don't know if I talked about this on the podcast last week, but I got the gloves from Algalon 10-man, Mims goggles, the Bis thrown weapon, and rune stone all in one run. It was crazy luck. And then this week in 10-man, I got dark matter. So I've had some luck as of late. It's been pretty crazy cool.
Yeah, it's pretty I don't know, that might have been your luck for the whole phase.
Yeah, seriously.
Well, what's crazy, and you're playing combat rogue. I mean, 9 of our BIS items are from 10-man hard modes. So
Same with Feral. It's probably the same items, to be honest, other than like the throwing weapon.
You guys are like, I think, getting a lot more of the armor pen stuff, but
what do you go for? You go for the XT bracers, the Vezix cloak, probably the ring from Algalon.
The ring from Algalon,
and Runestone. Which one though? The belt from Yogg. You got when I say ring, I'm talking about Band of Lights. Not the reply code ring. Yeah. And then potentially, depending on what you want to mess around with, maybe like flight goggles, maybe like gloves from Algalon. Like there's a few ways that you can swing some stuff.
Well, Mims goggles are BIS for, I don't know if they're BIS for assassination or not, but they're definitely BIS for combat. There's a little bit of difference between assassination and combat because of the expertise you get in the combat tree. So, but that's been just really lucky on the rogue. And so, and then another thing I did this week, which was really fun, is if you guys remember when Simon Eyes came on the show a few weeks back, he came up with an idea. I'd like to think I inspired it, but he came up with it to do an all rogue molten core run. Just like he starts out just him. When he wipes, bring in 1 rogue. When 2 rogues wipe, bring in another rogue, and so forth, right? And so we did that. He wiped, I think on purpose, on the first boss, just because I think he wanted company. But then we went in.
Main actor.
We 2-manned everything to Golemag. Then we didn't plan properly for Golemag, and because we had just done everything easy as pie up to that point, and we died. So we brought in a 3rd rogue. We killed the last 3 bosses, including Rag, although it was a little bit cheap because we somehow, I don't know if we bugged it out or not, but because we killed the ads on Domo so fast, but Domo gave the buff he usually gives to his ads to us. So we had a 60-some% damage bonus and some sort of speed bonus, and we were huge. Like it grew us. So I'm like running, because it looks really like you're slow when you're big, right? I'm like, I don't remember. It must be a buff we get for Ragnaros. And I'm sitting there, we're talking. I'm like, I don't remember getting this, and they're like, I don't remember it either. And then it was, you couldn't even see the buff. You had to open your character pane to actually see the buff because it just wasn't meant for players. So I don't know if we could have 3-manned Rag because we just don't know because we did so much damage. But
how long did that buff last?
Interesting.
As soon as we walked out of Molten Core, it was gone. So
but you had it the entire time you were in there?
Well, we only had Rag left after Domo, so we went.
But even after you kill Rag and you're just role playing around in Molten Core, you still have that buff? Yep. What the hell?
I believe Simon Eyes and I think now Sarth are going to be trying to test to see if they can get summoned to a different dungeon and see if because that would be a fun little broken thing for until Blizzard fixes it. But so then we went to
Avalon with the Domo buff.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
We did it so fast. We were like, well, this was a lot easier than we thought it was. So let's do BWL. So we went in. 3 of us almost got Razor down. We almost got the first boss, but had 4 eggs left. So we brought in a 4th rogue. went all the way to Neff. You wouldn't believe how fast the second boss died. What's his name? Because we all just switched to mutilate, and it literally was just dead in seconds. But then we died on Neff at like, I don't know, 20%, and we brought a 5th rogue in, killed Neff with no deaths. So next stop, when he does it again, AQ40. We're gonna see how many rogues it takes to do that. Same starting rules.
Get your Cold Rage daggers ready for Viscidus.
Yeah, I feel like I'm hoping Simon Eyes can solo the first boss, because I feel like bringing in a second rogue just going to make that boss harder because of the mind control.
True, yeah.
So it's going to be an interesting, but it's a fun thing. So yeah.
Well, depending on how many of you have for it, so now I'm just thinking about Viscidus. Depending on how many of you have for that one, like the new sappers do so much more damage than goblin sappers that like you might be able to just like cycle one of you sapper and kills all the oozes, and then you might be able to, or just all of you do it anyway. You'll still be able to one phase it, because back in the day, like the whole raid would be NG, and you just sapper all the oozes and you one phase Viscidus.
The hardest thing is just going to be to break the thing. So of course I am currently trying to farm 2 Cold Rage daggers.
Stick some frost oil on them.
Yep, that's what. And I even got Icy Chill to put on them once I get them.
Oh, dude, Death Frost.
It's the thing says less effect at higher levels, but if it procs, even 3 times, it'll be helpful in that situation type of deal.
Because it's the amount of them, not how much damage it does. It's the count.
Yep, exactly. So that's the fun stuff that I've been doing, and I've been doing those TOC dailies too. I didn't realize that they would keep opening up more ones, so now I'm like, oh crap, well I should have been doing these the whole time. Dang it. But there's a lot of mounts that I want from that, so I've been doing that, and yeah, that's all I've been doing.
There's a lot of stuff to do in WoW, man. Especially if you're doing stuff that like where you're creating your own content, like you and Simon doing the rogue runs and whatever. Like that's not something Blizzard gave you. You guys decided to do that on your own. That's why WoW has been so cool for so long, is because players just make their own content.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right. Well, anybody have anything to add before we move on? That looks like that's a no. So let's go ahead and move on to
time for the news.
All right. So you talked about this. I don't know if it's the pre-show or at the start of the. Yeah, you talked about it at the very start of the show. This isn't really news, but I want you, Rugs, to let everybody know why their tanks should be building a block gear set.
Ooh, okay, sure. So phase 3 comes out. We get TOGC, which is a really cool raid. I'm going to be optimistic about it because there's no trash. It's kind of nice. One of those bosses in that raid is a very fun boss, actually, but he has a very interesting mechanic where he spawns 4 ads. This is a noob, the last boss. And the Nerubian burrowers on a noob have an aura that increases their attack speed of the people around them. And so when they get stacked up, they attack really, really, really fast. And it was originally determined from OG Wrath that you could build a block set for this encounter and avoid all their attacks for the most part, and manage them way, 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 way better. Previously, you would have had to have 1 tank on the boss and then even separate the 2 ads, so you'd have 3 tanks total. But instead, you could have 1 tank on the boss and then 1 block tank take all 4 ads, and it just makes the fight insanely easier. It feels like a TBC thing where we'd stack nature resistance for a certain encounter or shadow resistance for a certain encounter. It's one of those things. So building a block set is hopefully something that all of your prot warriors and prot paladins and even just ret paladins and fury warriors should have been doing this entire time, because having 1 of those block tanks is basically the key to success on a noob next phase. So best of luck with building those sets. Takes a bit of time.
Yep. It's crazy because I never tanked in TOC, and I don't know if I forgot this or I just didn't know what I didn't know. No, you know, like there wasn't as much communication back in the day. So, you know, your tanks did a lot of stuff, and your officers that you just really, as a DPS, just didn't know and didn't care to learn, right? So I don't know if I ever knew it, but I'm so glad that I've saved every piece of gear that I've gotten, because I pretty much have the entire blocks, the entire, like, I guess, pre-bis block set. I'm sure you can get items to make it better later, right?
Yes. There's a couple items during phase 3 that will even improve the current block set. And there's even items that are flexible. As I'm sure you were building yours, you probably saw that the trash cloak from Nax 25 is also basically equivalent to the one that's PoE off of Iron Council 10-man.
Yep. And I kept all of that
items
gear
that are
too.
A little interchangeable. Yeah.
Which is
so
awesome.
It's all just about hitting. I want to say the number is 101.6 total avoidance. And you want to have, I think, 2,000 block rating.
Well, actually, Rugs,
things.
actually, it is 101.68%. Just to clarify there for you.
No, thank you. Hell, I don't know the exact number.
I just love it when people do that crap.
It's normally 102.4, but the ads are not level 63, so that's why it's. But yeah,
interesting.
They're 82. They're 82.
Yeah,
Okay.
83. You mean? I was like, they're level 63. This is gonna be super easy.
I'm playing too much hardcore. Holy shit. But yeah, be
that's
prepared to see Prot
combined.
Warriors.
Yeah, that's also with dodge and parry added in, right? Okay.
Be prepared to see warriors like surprisingly high on the damage for a noob because of damage shield, the talent. Like with all of those ads stacked up, attacking super fast, and they're just taking damage for free because of that talent. And the ads will literally just kill themselves on the warrior shield.
Yeah. A lot of people are harking back to like pre-patch or leveling when warriors would go the UA spec. And I'm not gonna say it's impossible. I'm sure UA is probably gonna absolutely destroy that fight. But I do think deep prot, having Shockwave 1 for the interrupt and also the damage shield damage is bananas. It's actually insane how much damage a prot warrior will do, and is 100% better than having a prot paladin. But, you know, like, beggars can't be choosers. I'll take a block tank any day of the week rather than, you know, telling someone no. So yeah, definitely Prot Warrior is going to be absolutely insane on that fight.
They can basically solo the ads. Like your DPS don't have to touch the ads; they can just tunnel boss because the warrior can basically solo them with damage shield. Yeah,
it's huge. The set that I have on 80 upgrades right now, and this feels kind of crazy to say, but fully raid buffed and fully phase 2 and below gear, I'm at like 107.28% total avoidance looking at it right now, with a block value of 3,237, which is before I throw on shield block or glyph of shield block or the Levanther's talisman trinket on use. Like, it's going to be insane. It's actually so cool. And it'll probably help some people do some, you know, boosting around dungeons and whatnot. Like, there's definitely some other uses for a fun little block set like that.
Yep.
Right.
I'm pretty excited. I was like, ooh, dodged a bullet. Glad I wasn't an enchanter. Like I might have actually gotten rid of it if it was like, you know, lots of money to be made. So it's awesome. Yeah. All right. Well, everybody just be ready for that. And if you haven't started looking into it, you should probably look into it. The Wowhead guide for you will be linked in the show notes for you. So
one last thing about the block thing. I'm telling you, there's probably like a 50% chance that just like with everything in Classic, that we can probably just brute force and not use a block tank. Like, I don't know what the Classic community is going to cook up next, but maybe we don't need block tanks. But until further notice, it is definitely in everyone's best interest to just get one before we cook up something stupid where we don't use it.
Yeah, they're going to be like, actually, we found a way that a boomkin can do this, and you're not going to believe. They just knock the ads right off the edge, and they get stuck in the wall.
So what we'll do is we'll chain stun them, and then we'll AoE taunt Bop, and then
right. There's going to be something. Give it like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
All right, well, guys, make sure you are looking into that. Now, this next piece of news is confusing me because I thought it was already in, but I guess it was just faction change that was in. But now race change is in. So I've been so confused at my guild. All of a sudden, my raid leader is no longer a cute little gnome warrior with pink hair. He's now a male human warrior. And,
So boring.
Oh, dude, that's all I play. Humans, man. Everybody gives me crap about that, but I'm like, dude, I like to pretend it's me. So I'm a human. So I pick a human. I even give it my same beard.
It's more relatable.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I like it. But yeah, so if you guys want race change, I was curious, when you faction change, do you get to choose your race?
Yes.
Yeah, you do. So like technically you could kind of race change, but it took 30 days because you would faction change and then faction change back, and then you could pick a new race. But you don't have to do that anymore. Like I didn't get the option because only Taurens can be druids, but any other, if you have multiple races available for your class, then yeah, when you faction change, you get to pick whatever race you want.
Okay, interesting. Oh yeah, maybe you should clarify here for Rugs, because I have people coming into my chat all of the time. I don't know why they don't come to your chat and ask you, but they're like, Rugs left Fusion? Like, why did he do that? Is it bad blood? Blah, blah, blah. Why don't you clear that up now that I thought about it?
Sure. So we were, the group that I play with within Fusion was just another additional raid team of Fusion's. Fusion had like 9 raid teams at the time.
Right.
We had this opportunity to transfer for free to Faralina and then just pay for a faction change. And because Faralina is 1 horde dominated, and 2 has a lot of really, really high competitive players and guilds on that server, and all that our roster is cared about is competing for Realm First and NA First. We decided it would be in our best interest to go to that server for recruitment and to go for that server for horde racials. And because a lot of the good talent on Benediction was already going to Faralina, we kind of felt like Benediction was trending down in terms of the competition on Benediction. And it was kind of like opportunities here knocking for free, essentially. Let's go for it. And it was in no bad blood, nothing whatsoever with Fusion, nothing whatsoever at all. Nothing against Fusion, but hell, we wanted all of Fusion to go with us. We felt like this was the right move to make, but because all of Fusion didn't want to go, we were just, all right, cool, we'll go. And we just started our own guild over there. It's the same people that we got the NA second Algalon kill with. It's basically 99% of the same people. We're just on a different server now with a different name. We're just technically not Fusion, but you could consider us a guild plant of Fusion.
like a like the pioneers that leave and go, someplace else, but are still kind of like
it's a Fusion colony.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, you guys were just, I was so sad because I was trying to get you into DKP and you had just got your warrior up and you had just transferred. I was like, hey, you want to come? You're like, yeah, invite blah, 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 Faralina. I was like, Faralina? No.
Oh, yeah, man. I'm a horde now. It's kind of fun. I like it a lot, man. I'm a big Tauren now. I used to hate Taurens. I used to hate the Tauren cat. Now I'm loving it. So yeah, it's super cool. I'm loving it.
I like little red marks on my shoulders.
Yeah.
Also, like low key, like Night Elf Cat, kind of weird with the collar and like the jewelry stuff. Wasn't a big fan of that.
It was a little
the
overdone.
new model, the new models.
Yeah. But I did think I was so used to being a white cat for so long just for visibility, because like otherwise you can't see. But then in Ulduar, there's so many fights where like the floor is white, or there's a bunch of spell effects that are white. So I couldn't see. So I was like, whatever, dude, I'll just pick whatever color.
Dude,
as Feral, I took a DPS loss going from Alliance to Horde. I'm losing 1% hit from not having a Draenei in my group, and I don't get anything from the racials. So it's a DPS loss for me, but I was a big champion of our roster, telling everyone like, we should go. This is a good move. We should do this.
Yeah, I'm afraid it's gonna keep happening. Like I think like might be slow right now, but if they do go on to Cataclysm, I think it happens big time there. People re-rolling from the start, right off the bat. I think that can really be a thing. So,
speaking of the Draenei racial, though, with this news about faction or race change being in now there's no, well, I guess money would be the excuse, but like a ton of raids now that didn't have a Draenei in every group now have like 18 Draenei's.
yeah, we had I think 3 or 4 people in our weekday raid that like swapped to Draenei now. I'm just like, how could you do it? You're a
So that's a pretty big implication of that news, is that there's a ton of Alliance players who can be Draenei's that weren't before that are now Draenei's.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I could complain about it, but if they keep like helping us out and doing stuff, like they have to monetize some way. So, you know, whatever. I really don't care at this point.
I mean, I feel like realistically, the like really sweaty people were doing things like this anyways. It was just harder, right? Like they were not going to go into a raid without enough Draenei, right? Like somebody was going to level a Draenei to make sure they had Draenei in their raids, right? So really, it's just making it so that a not like super sweaty guild can still have the right comp and compete in that way.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't care. Whatever.
Yep. Well, I just wanted everybody to know, you know.
As long as nobody asks me to go Draenei, because that's not going to happen.
Yeah. No, me neither. Yeah.
Yes, I want to be space goats.
Nope. Not even a little bit.
You guys like being able to see your boots? Like,
listen, I went through all of vanilla being a human priest. Okay. So if I can last not having Fear Ward and vanilla, then I can stay human.
We had 3 human priests in our guild in vanilla and 1 dwarf priest.
That would frustrate me so much because I'm such a hardcore player that I would always get frustrated. Like, why would you pick Night Elf Hunter when you have Draenei Hunter as an option? Like, come on, dude. Like, why would you pick Human Shadow Priest? Like, it's so obvious to me when we were Alliance and building a roster for Wrath. It's like, hello. But I'm actually so glad that we don't have to deal with that anymore. All of our healers on Horde, they go in group 5. And you don't have to mix around healers everywhere. It's just kick them to group 5 and they can stay there.
It's like
to the back of the raid.
Shun group over there. Yeah, why can't they be group 1, huh? Why you get put them in group 5?
That's just how we do it.
We do it the same way. Oh, all right, well, let's move on to...
Bobby, we need to have a talk about this World of Warcraft Classic. Do I look like I know what a WoW token is?
All right. This week, we have titled the discussion, Yay, Feral Druids, Rugs was right. Suck it. Oh, man. Well, let's here. I want to let everybody know. I'll put it in the show notes. Rugs did a great video for Classic Life yesterday with a special creator guest. I'm not going to play it here because I feel like it was made for Classic Life, but I'll leave a link to it. But I implore you to go check it out on Classic Life. It's at the very end. You will definitely enjoy it. I'm not going to give you any spoilers, but it's great. So yeah, definitely check it out. You will not be sorry.
Man, it's a good video.
Yeah, with the music.
As soon as the music kicked in, I was like, all right, yep, here we go.
All right, well, I could explain this change, but why don't one of you go ahead and explain it? I'm guessing better than me.
Word. Yeah, it's interesting. We had a couple different perspectives on the whole thing too. We got the two more prevalent styles of.
Well, here, hold on.
Present here.
Just tell them what the change is first.
Yeah. So it's kind of like a 2-part thing. They removed the ability for Gift of the Wild to proc Omen of Clarity, which a lot of ferals were doing either during the fight or even just before the fight to start the fight with an Omen proc. And they also, in tandem with that, gave Fairy Fire Feral 100% chance to proc Omen of Clarity. So now basically every 6 seconds you just hit Fairy Fire Feral and you get an Omen proc.
Okay, and for anybody who doesn't know druids, what Omen of Clarity does is when it procs, it gives you a free cast. Now, lots of people will think that means casting a spell, but it also means a free move in either bear or cat that does not take rage or energy. A lot of people might not know that, so I wanted to clear it up for the audience.
Yep, just the next thing you do is free. For whatever resource you would have spent on it, it's free instead.
Yep.
So it's pretty powerful change. A lot of people saw a pretty significant DPS increase because of the change. And it was a change that Blizzard made because they weren't happy with the tactics that druids were using, feral druids were using to like squeeze out extra damage. Like they didn't like the whole flower shifting or gift weaving thing. They didn't like bear weaving. So they wanted to make a change.
Tanks, we did not like bear weaving either.
It was a little rough on threat there. But yeah, so this is the change that Blizzard thought would be the best way to kind of bring things back to more of the monocat playstyle as it's known.
Yeah. So I'm trying to think of where we should start with it. Okay, first off, let's start with, was bear weaving even fun? Like,
a lot of people did have fun with it. I had fun with it. A lot of people that I know that I talked to had fun with it. Because it's just that extra level of complexity. Like when you get the hang of something, you look for like kind of the next challenge, and bear weaving, specifically lacerate weaving, was sort of like that next step up as far as like challenge goes. So it was kind of fun to kind of push the limit of like what you could fit into the rotation and things like that. So there's a decent chunk of people who are upset with the change because now, bear weave, you can't really bear weave anymore. I mean, there might be a way that we can somehow figure it out to fit it in. I don't know if it's going to do more or less damage. We'll see. But there's a few people that aren't happy with it because effectively we can't really bear weave anymore. Right. But there's a lot of people who are happy with the change because the complexity of feral has always been sort of well known, even back in the day. So there's a lot. It's more accessible to play now. There's the skill floor has raised like quite a bit. It's easier to get into it now. So there's the people that didn't want to bear weave or thought that the rotation was just generally too complicated. A lot of those people are happier because now they don't have to like sweat as hard basically to be somewhat competitive on damage.
Well, and
wasn't it like, even though you were putting in all this work and doing all of these crazy things, your damage still wasn't where it could have been if you were playing like a rogue or something, right? Like,
yeah, kind of. I mean, there are certain fights that are good for it. Like there's definitely a few fights that feral does that did pretty well on previously, but generally speaking, like on average, if you average all the fights, yeah, like you're putting in like 10 times the work to do, half the damage of like an Unholy Death Knight or whatever.
And I heard that I've heard from a few different ferals that the gap for air was huge or something. Like if you missed something, like a certain something in bear, like I forget what they said, but they basically said like you could basically just kill your rotation in its tracks like really easily.
Yeah, it's pretty punishing. Like there were times where like if there was a mechanic that caused you to lose a little bit of uptime and you can't refresh lacerate stacks, you have to start over stacking it, and then that's a DPS loss. And it's just generally, if you make a mistake, it's a lot more punishing with bear weaving than anything else really. So it's like it's hard. It was hard to do the rotation to begin with, and it was very easy to mess it up.
Gotcha. Well, what did you think of bear weaving, Rugs? Fun, not fun?
Well, I've been against bear weaving for a really long time, but mostly just because I think it was being shipped to the masses as the best and most optimal play style, which I think was very subjective to the encounter that you were facing. And so I was what was called a flower weaver or a gift weaver or flower shifter. That was the gameplay that I did. So I didn't actually bear weave. I was part of the group that was casting Gift of the Wild in open opportunity times, or like when I was low energy or losing uptime. I would cast Gift and I'd get a free Omen proc so that when I got uptime again or went back cap form, I could get a free shred off, which was just as good as bear weaving in basically every scenario. It's a very, very optimal gameplay style that was easier and also kind of just played a little differently. You didn't have to go bear form. Your talents were different. Your gymming was different. But at the end of the day, the damage profile was basically the exact same. It's been found to be so vastly different depending on the encounter. You'd have Lacerate Weave, which is where you go bear form and stack up Lacerate. You'd have Mangle Weave, you'd have Flower Shifting, and you'd have Monocat. It's basically 4 different types of gameplay for ferals that you'd have out there at your disposal. And Blizzard has removed 3 of those. Flower Shifting, you literally cannot do anymore because you cannot get a proc from Gift Weaving. And Bear Weaving is potentially like just suboptimal. That's remaining to be seen. But this current buff has currently been so substantial that I don't see a world where Bear Weaving is going to be better than it, unless it's a like particularly favorable fight for a very long Lacerate Weave.
Yeah, there's like
weaving increase your threat like bear weaving did.
It depends, like, because you get a lot more shreds out, right? So like if they're critting a lot, then like you could have similar threat. It's definitely less than bear weaving though, because like bear is a tank form, like everything does increase threat while you're in it, including lacerates, even when you go back to cat form. So I mean,
yeah.
Threat was more of an issue for bear weaving for sure, but threat could still be an issue with flower shifting for sure.
Right. So like I had threat issues mostly on opener. It was always opener threat that I would just have a massive burst and rip threat on Algalon or rip threat somewhere and just fall over and die.
You didn't have your combat rogue tricksing the tank, because I think if they just tricks the tank right off the bat with
tricks and killing spree.
Yeah, I mean, it really gives the tank like almost an impossible, like it's almost impossible for anybody to pull off if the rogue does it quick enough and right.
I don't know if there were.
You guys probably gave it to all the actual DPS, probably.
Yeah. I have a clip on my channel where I have an opener on Algalon. This is before the change. And I get 3 salves. Now, one of them was like super not useful because they gave it to me like right as the poll started. And one of the salves was like really good. And with 3 salves, I'm still second on threat. Like Feral opener was really powerful before this change. It's still going to be really powerful now. And threat is still going to be an issue, which I find just fundamentally weird because I know that Blizzard wanted to take a look at Feral's threat and potentially make an adjustment to it, which is why like they went about like this change, or not it's one of the reasons why they went about this change the way that they did, is to hopefully make it so that tank quality of life isn't so absolutely miserable. And I think this is a step in the right direction for sure, but it's not to say that Feral threat is fully solved forever now.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Well,
it was definitely frustrating for tanks, but also frustrating for us because like you would think that with like that much threat gen, that our damage would be better. Normally, if you see somebody that close to the tank on threat, it means that they're pumping, and then you have to scroll down on details to find where you are. It's like, well, how am I? Am I on the tank's ass and I'm like 12th on damage? Like, how is that possible?
Well, that is weird too, because I assume the opener you're in cat, you know. So I always thought that the bear weaving was the problem because you were swapping to bear and getting that threat modifier.
Oh man, it's just Berserk. Berserk is cracked.
Berserk is insane.
I do have one question about the gift weaving, flower weaving. So something was brought up on Classic Life was that when you shift to flower weave, you lose the 3% crit buff. Is that like for the entire raid? So is that not an entire raid DPS loss?
I mean, in theory, it would be, but in the group that I ran with, we always had a Fury Warrior that provides the same crit buff for your raid.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
so we wouldn't lose anything to begin with. And I think most people are running in a similar comp as that. So it wasn't much of a concern. It was definitely something that was worth noting about flower weaving, but it's not typically a concern for most people.
It was more of a thing early when like you would have one warrior that was arms for the 4% physical damage debuff. Yeah. And after a while, once combat rogues started to get better, rogues were switching to combat, and then they brought the 4%, and then the warriors are going fury. So at that point, it didn't matter anymore.
See, I feel like that should have been instant day one. They should have been like, oh, okay, never mind. Arms go to fury, bring combat rogue, way more damage.
People were sleeping on combat, man.
Yeah, I
people
wasn't.
Were sleeping on fury. I think arms has underperformed every expectation that I had for arms. And again, those expectations were never really high, but
I thought it'd be a little bit better.
I thought it'd be a little bit better than where it's at right now. I'm surprised fury is just so much better than arms.
Well, I think arms is so I played arms and I tried both the weird fury without like during pre-patch, the weird fury without the two-handed weapons. Like you just still dual wielded normal weapons, right? And that was still pretty dang good in pre-patch. But I tried the arms build, and it's a lot tougher. Like you're having to watch for a lot of different procs to do all the different moves. Like it's a very seems like a very reactive style of play, like where
or whack-a-mole.
Yeah, exactly. And so like I wonder if people just, it's just hard. But I mean, obviously there's probably not a whole ton of people that are extremely good really working on making it good at the same time. So that could be a little bit, but it is weird that it's underperforming so bad. Okay, well, all right, so let's talk about the new feel of the new rotation and how that feels.
It'll be interesting to talk about because we got kind of both perspectives on it. Because I did some gift weaving in phase 1 just to see what it was like, but then I went back to lacerate weave for phase 2. But Ruggs, you've been basically gift weaving the whole time, so it'll be interesting to hear, the perspective from both styles of weaving, I suppose.
That is awesome.
Yeah, I think the overall feel of how much damage you're doing and the amount of omen procs that you're getting per fight feels much more in line to what I expected Feral to play at in my early predictions on where Feral would land in the DPS meter before Classic came out, Wrath Classic.
And and when you talked about it, you talked about Omen of Clarity specifically often. And like then when Wrath came out, you talked about, well, this is not working the same way as it did in private servers.
Right. And just for clarity's sake, on P server, we could do lots of different shenanigans to get that Omen proc to happen more frequently. Things like Dragon Breath Chili or Storm Chops or, just name a million different things. Yeah, Flame Caps. Like there was a lot of things that like played into that. On P server, you would still use Feral Fairy Fire on cooldown because it gave you a chance to get an Omen proc. On Classic, it didn't give you a chance to proc at all. It used to be 0. So the play style feels much more in line to P server. But the weird thing is that since it's a 100% proc rate, it most of the time, like I want to say 90% of the time, 80% of the time, it feels great. It feels good. And then there's like a 10 to 20% chance where it's like, I just spent Feral Fairy Fire when I just got an Omen proc. That kind of sucks. And now I'm stuck in a global and I just wasted a global and I'm stuck in a global. That sucks. And Ferals have ran into like weird interactions like that before. Like, I don't know if you remember Feral having 2-piece T4 in Burning Crusade. Really great set bonus. Like
an energy proc.
The energy proc was awesome. But at the time, Feral, the gameplay meta was to power shift. And so if you were low energy and you power shifted, but if you got like that energy proc, like a fraction of a second before you power shifted, that proc was fully wasted because you just power shifted and got your energy back. So the set bonus was totally wasted. And we're kind of running into a similar situation here where we force our Omen proc, but then maybe we just got like a fraction of a second before that Omen proc, we got one. So it almost doesn't feel right because Omen procs should again be like a proc. It's just like an RNG thing that happens, and once it happens, boom, you hit that button. It should be instant gratification on that. Like, I just got a free shred, boom. Forcing the proc doesn't feel quite the same as other procs in the game.
Yeah, like for instance, combat, the offhand hit can proc extra
combat potency
energy, and that feels really good when you get. But then, like sometimes at the start of a fight, you'll get a bunch. You're like, oh crap, I could have got another move in there. Dang it, like.
Or like you cap energy and it's not your own fault. Like it looks, people are looking at your logs, be like, oh, this guy capped energy for like 3 seconds straight, but then they don't look at like the buff gains or whatever, and it's like, oh, you just got a billion procs back to back, like.
Yeah. So I guess that part, taking the RNG out almost kind of feels worse.
Well, the weird thing is, like, the reason why it feels so weird is it's not taking the RNG out. The RNG is still there, but then there's also the surefire thing. So it's like, that's like kind of like,
because
like,
you can proc it on the other stuff.
So like you can still get the random procs, but then when you're forcing it, sometimes you're already in the process. Like Rug was saying, you're already in the process of hitting the button, and then you get a natural proc, and you're like, oh, come on.
Yeah. Which, so it, again, like 80 to 90% of the time, it's going to feel awesome. Like, especially on AoE, being able to know for certain, because swipe costs 45 energy, most expensive ability we have, because that costs so much, and I can know for certain if I Fairy Fire and then swipe that it's free, is massive. It is so big for us for AoE. Like, that feels fucking awesome. I used to gift weave, and I'm sure even the bear weavers would gift weave on AoE packs just so they could get another swipe in, because it's so good. So again, most of the time it feels great. It just, maybe it wasn't what I would have done if I was a Blizzard developer, because I think procs should be procs. They have an RNG proc element to it, and I think forcing it just kind of feels a little off sometimes.
Yeah, I agree. Like it's almost like they wanted to make one change that would be like the magic fix for it or whatever, and like it remains to be seen whether or not like that it was the right move, or if there's like other stuff they maybe could have done to help out with it. Like, they didn't necessarily have to give Fairy Fire 100% chance to proc it. They could have gave it less than 100% chance, but then also given like, boosted an ability like Cower, because they're talking about our threat issues.
Yep.
Well, if Cower was not a static threat drop, if it was instead like a percentage based thing, and also maybe when you press Cower, maybe that would give you a chance to proc Omen also. So it's not a surefire thing, but you have a couple of different things that you can do extra to like eliminate what Blizzard saw as like the problem playstyle, while also helping solve the problems.
For sure. I would have thought that Cower would have been a good place to start spitballing an idea of like how we can fix Feral. Cower absolutely sucks and is a wasted global for everyone involved currently, and it was before. But in terms of like the feel of like a full length boss encounter for Feral, the amount of actions per minute that you're spending now versus previous monocat, because we basically have to compare it to monocat because that's what we're doing now. Previous monocat had downtime. You just straight up would sit and have no global to spend in certain moments. There was nothing to do. I mean,
that's why I don't like. That's why I don't like to play Mutilate, because it's more like, duh.
Yeah, pooling simulator.
Whereas combat's like, like it's just like you're doing stuff at all the time.
And Feral now feels way more like that. Like, it's actually a really good, huge quality of life and way more fun for like a monocat player, which is probably most of the community, to be completely honest. You are spending more globals per minute, which feels great. You get to spend your Feral Fairy Fire, which is a global that you press, and then your shred immediately after, And then between those two globals, you probably have built up energy to spend another shred or a rake or something. So it feels pretty freaking good right now.
I think even just going from gift weaving to this new version is still more APM, because like when you gift weave, that GCD is 1.5. Going back to cat's another 1.5. You're staying in cat the whole time now, so every GCD is 1.0. So like by default, you're on average
realize it was
more
1.5.
APM. Yeah, the normal GCD for every other class is 1.5. It's just rogues and ferals in cat form that's 1.0. So yeah, now like by default, even going from gift weave to the new monocat, I guess, I don't know if that's is by default more APM because the GCD is always 1.0 now.
Yeah,
Cool.
and there's still a really high skill ceiling with it. Now, granted, the skill ceiling has been probably collapsed, for lack of better words. It has been brought down significantly, the skill ceiling. The floor is being brought up for a lot of ferals. There is still a lot of room for optimization. Like knowing when to press Feral Fairy Fire is the next thing for ferals to like make sure that they optimize to the best of their ability. Like you don't want to do it when you're cap on energy. You don't want to do it when you have an Omen proc and all those sorts of things. Like making sure you make good use out of that one global is going to be a way to optimize and separate yourself from the pack. But definitely feels weird that the floor has been brought up so significantly and the ceiling has been brought down so much.
Oh yeah, we didn't really talk about that. You guys mentioned in pre-show before we started the show talking about maybe the reason it feels bad, the change for some people, is because they practice so long at getting good at bear weaving, and now they feel like that practice was maybe a waste of time.
It could be. I mean, you could say similar things also about like power shifting, like getting really good at power shifting, knowing when to shift and all that stuff. And now power shifting's gone. But like, you know, there are people who miss power shifting for sure. Including myself. Like I thought it was fun, but like I've liked every version of Feral that has happened so far. So like, you know, it's like I have fond memories of power shifting and I do miss it, but you know, I'm still having fun with the new thing. And that's how I felt going from lacerate weaving to the new stuff. Like it was fun to get good at it. It was fun to optimize, but like kind of the way that I've chosen to look at it is like, we have a new thing now. But it's an opportunity to like re-Theorycraft again. Like I was raid logging before, you know, I was raid logging Wrath and playing hardcore in the downtime. And now there's a reason to be on Wrath again for me, to be sitting on a dummy and then re-Theorycrafting, re-practicing, re-optimizing. So like, it's fun for me to like have a reason to like practice again. So like, that's kind of the way that I've chosen to look at it. But for sure, like there are a ton of people who are upset because they feel like they wasted a bunch of time sitting on dummies, figuring out how to lacerate weave. And like, you know, I can't blame them. Like, you know, if you have limited time to spend and that's what you spent it on, and now the thing that you learned is gone, like I can definitely understand how that would be frustrating for a lot of people.
I mean, it just depends on if you like practice. Like I practice at least 1 to 2 hours a week, which isn't a ton, but I do it. And I know how to play combat, like, but I still keep doing it to try and just keep muscle memory, you know, like good. Like that's why I enjoyed making the other rogue, because like the more you do it, the better you get at it, you know. And so, especially in different situations, you know. So I don't know. I like practice, so making a change is kind of fun for me. But what about you, Rugs? What do you think? Like, as far as flower weaving went, like,
well, okay, so for like a flower shift or even a bear weaver, gosh, the words are just so many weaves. At the end of the day, we got a buff. No matter what playstyle you played, we got buffed, and it's a pretty freaking big buff, to be honest. So no matter how frustrating it can be to like get a playstyle taken away from you, it feels probably better that you got buffed, because doing more damn is always a feels good. So
yeah, for sure.
We can't really complain all that much, you know? Like, what's there to complain about? We're doing more damage, and we're doing the damage that like I genuinely predicted that Feral would be doing at this point in the game and for the remainder of the game. We should have always been topping meters, because that's how Feral played in OG Wrath. That's how Feral has played in Wrath Peace server. Like that, to
for
me,
sure.
traditional Wrath, like Feral is a S tier class. Like, I don't know if we're S tier now, but we're definitely like A tier. We're doing
like
really
C
good damage.
Yeah,
before we were so lows. Like,
yeah,
I don't know.
yeah,
it's kind of like one of the things that was frustrating for sure was like the amount of effort that we had to put in to be good. Like even just a good feral, like still wasn't good damage. So it's like now it feels like the effort that we put in, because it's still a complicated rotation. It's easier than it was, but it's still a pretty complicated rotation.
Yeah.
So like feral is still a difficult spec to play.
yeah,
but it's just it's not as bad as it was.
Yeah, more on the lines of like how hard it is to play combat type of deal, right?
Yeah, it feels a lot more like the effort that we put in is actually paying dividends now. Like the amount of effort that we have to put in to get good at this spec, we now are seeing the results of that on the meters, which feels really good. Like we went from Blizzard not thinking they cared at all about ferals to now it's like, oh, turns out they cared enough to boost us that much. Like, wow, it's kind of crazy.
To be honest, you probably, people that did practice and master different types of weaving and all of that, I think in reality, they probably learned their class a lot better. They learned like why different things did different, brought different moves and things like that, right? Like, and so I don't think all of that is necessarily lost on anybody, right? It's just now directed in a different way. It's not like by bear weaving, you had this set standard thing that you would always press this button and then this button, right? I mean, I don't know, maybe it was, but
it was definitely a play it by ear type of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely interesting, and it's like as the dust settles, like as because we're on like what day 3, day 4 of the change or something like that. Like it's all still pretty new. There's still definitely a lot of
right?
Yeah. So it's still pretty new. Like there's still plenty of time to like figure things out and optimize stuff and to practice and get better at it and whatever. So it's still, anytime you change anything, there's going to be some pushback, which is like kind of to be expected. So I feel like, I don't know, everybody's obviously entitled to whatever opinion they want to have on the change and everything like that. But I think overall it's, even if it turns out that the change wasn't 100% good, it's good that Blizzard cares enough to do something to help out our damage.
Well, okay, so initially I was pretty scared because Tuesday night, so we have a really good Feral Druid who's 99 parser, he's one of our best players, right? Well, typically on bosses, by the end of the night, he was, somewhere around, I don't know, 10 to 13, because, he's one of the better players in the guild. Well, Tuesday night, we in the raid, he's number 1 on bosses. And I'm just like, oh my God, what just happened? And then I hear from a lot of other people the same type of story. So I look into it, of course, because, it was only a few different, raid group situations. And I look at the DPS from last week, and Feral Druid is sitting at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17th on total DPS in the, 99th percentile, in the 95th percentile, right? So like that's really low, but then you can only look at one day, or 1 week, or two weeks in Warcraft logs. So it's kind of hard to tell. Like we need a full week to see where they're really at. But like as of one day, Feral Druids are now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They're 7th, right? So it went from 17th to 7th. So it wasn't. I was thinking they were for sure number 1 now, and who knows? They might be, like, because I can't see everything. Like, and they're people probably haven't all done it. Like the word still isn't totally out. Like it's
or just practice too. Like
practice, yeah. And so I'm a little worried. Just
I feel
because.
like there's definitely room to be worried, I'm sure. And if anyone from Blizzard's listening, like let us have some time to like really feel this out. Like let it play out. That we definitely freaked out when Ret Paladins got their buff. We were
Right.
like, holy shit, red paladins are doing big, damn. Like, just let it
Yeah.
play out for a little bit. Let's see how it goes. Because if Feral is up there with Unholy DK, Aflock, Fire Mage, Combat Rogue, Assassination Rogue, Demo Lock, Survival Hunter, that's not a bad thing. Like, that is a really good, like, that's a lot of classes that I just listed that if Feral is in the community, in that group, that's good. Now, if they're in a group where it's like, oh, it's between like Feral and Aflock, that might be a problem. That is like a extreme
That scares
situation.
the shit
might be a
out
little
of me because of okay. So ret scares me even more. Like them being like an S tier DPS, like that. The thought of that scares the living crap out of me because of the paladin utility across the board. But Ferals, Innervate, B-Res, like if they're right under Affilock, like you're gonna stack them at that point, right? Because why not?
I don't know if you'd stack them per se because Wrath is such a caster friendly expansion.
Yeah,
Right.
but you might stack them over assassination rogues or over mages or not okay. I'm trying to think of like.
I feel like this comment is very selfish on Bob's part, just because he's like, "Wait a minute, they're
I'm
gonna try to get
I'm
didn't
safe.
fill in.
I'm the combat rogue. I am safe. I bring a lot of other stuff and bring a lot of utility. Like if we don't have a hunter that night, like I can bring wound. Like there's all kinds of stuff that I can bring and help with the raid, and I have a great buff.
If beforehand you only brought one feral and never a second because that one feral brought, your 5%, but also your bleed debuff with Mangle. If that's the only reason you brought a feral and you only brought one, and now the conversation is, oh, we could maybe bring two. I don't think that's a bad thing either.
That is completely fine. I just worry about bringing like a ton, right?
I don't think there's like a whole lot of room for groups to be taking a whole bunch of ferals. Maybe if you're in a GDKP and you just want them to bid against each other, it's not really going to hurt your kill time or hurt your chances of killing a boss. Is bringing more ferals for sure, but it's still pretty optimal. Like every rogue that you add is a pretty substantial DPS increase for every warlock that you have. Like if you bring 5 warlocks, you can bring up to 5 rogues in theory, because that means that they're all going to be like having way better corruption snapshots and drain soul snapshots. That's big. Feral, their limits are kind of capped at the skill of the raid group. Like if you don't need to use a battle res, then it's useless. If you don't need an innervate, then utility is useless.
That is the point that I made. That is the point that I made on Classic Life is, it would be more useful the worse your guild was. Like, because basically B-Res it corrects a mistake that a player has made, right? And the higher you get up, the less mistakes you make. But then Simon Eyes pointed out, well, if you have more B-Reses, you go in knowing that you can make mistakes and you push it even harder type of deal. And
maybe
I was like, okay,
you wouldn't otherwise take.
I was like, I could see that too, I guess.
Yeah, that's for sure. But I don't think, like Rugg is saying, I don't think it's gonna I don't think 2 counts as stacking. The one thing that I was chilling on a dummy in org earlier, and shout out to Kim Jong Liest on Mancrik, but we were chatting a little bit and we were like, remember in TBC when you would have like a prop pally and like 2 ferals, and one of the ferals was like tank main, the other was DPS main, and on 3 tank fights, both ferals would tank.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly what
there might be some opportunity to do something like that in Wrath now, because Death Knights do some pretty good damage in their DPS spec. So like there could be, because the whole dodge change and everything, like and with Fairy Fire, bears have a little bit better threat options available to them as well, especially on pull. Like initial threat was usually a problem with bear. I've definitely played a lot more cat than bear this expansion, so any bear mains, like, forgive me for potentially getting some stuff slightly inaccurate, but like there could be a potential that maybe bring 2 ferals again and have the exact same tank situation that we had in TBC, where you have a prop pally main tank and then a feral who is bear main and then a feral who is cat main, and then on potential fights where you need more than 2 tanks, both the ferals tank, and on one tank fights both the ferals DPS. Could potentially, like bears aren't the best tank, but they're not the worst either. Like the tanks are kind of like, you know, outside of prop pally DK, you know, ferals aren't that far behind. Like it's definitely viable. It's maybe not optimal, but it is viable. Like you could potentially.
I don't know about on Algalon though.
I don't know what you're talking about. Warrior is,
and I was like, ugh.
Prot warrior best. Sorry, I'm sucking my copium right now, bro.
Okay, so
on specific fights, it could be a thing.
Yeah,
if you
cool.
have to say on one hand your main tanks, and it's like prot paladin, number 1 best, close behind is prot warrior, and then your off tanks you have probably feral druid number 1, and then DK right below it. And there's a lot of reasons for all of those things. I think it's kind of a good thing that if your reasoning for having feral as your best off tank is because they bring that buff, and then do decent, I guess, okay-ish damage as their off spec. Now it's even better because you have more flexibility there. It's not about who brings the buff anymore. It's like you can bring anyone. You can probably just take the DK tank off tank. Now it's like this is an increased stock value for DK tanks because they're not getting kicked out of their off tank role because they don't bring any unique buffs that feral does. So it just adds more flexibility to the tank landscape in terms, at least how I see it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's a good thing too. And like James is saying in chat here, that avoidance change for the dodge, like the bug fix to the dodge rating thing, is a relative change to bears because we have so much agility on our gear that like we didn't really get too big of a hit from the dodge rating change because so much of our dodge already comes from agility.
Agi rather than dodge rating.
So it didn't hit us as hard as it did the like the shield classes, because a lot, they have a lot of dodge rating on their gear, but also a lot of it comes from defense. Obviously druids don't have to worry about that because we have a talent that gives us our crit suppression. But the same thing kind of with DKs is like, you know, the rating change that's part of why it didn't hit druids as hard as it hit the other tank classes, because so much of our dodge is coming from agility.
Yeah, because you're only ever going to have dodge rating on like rings, capes,
and like mechs and whatever. Yeah. So like it was comparatively speaking, compared to the other tanks, not as hard of a nerf for bears as it was for the other tanks because of the agility thing.
Interesting. I didn't even think about that. Yeah.
I didn't either till James said that. So thank you, James.
Thank you, James. Oh, so yeah. So that was the only thing I like really wanted to cover on impact, but also there's been a lot of people who have like been using sims and trying to point out that now feral druids are simming higher than Shadowmourne Fury Warriors in ICC gear. That was something Sarth showed yesterday.
About that. Firstly, that's in a pure single target situation, which feral has always been the single target king. Like that's what they do. So if a feral is going to be an absolute chart topper, please let it be the pure single target encounter. The only thing that they're going to be really, really good at is like a 5 target encounter, but there's not many of those, you know? So if it's a pure single target thing, yeah, let feral be S tier. That's okay. That's not a bad thing per se, but removing like the lens of a vacuum sim, there's a lot of downtime between certain encounters. Like heroic Lich King has a lot of melee downtime. It just kind of does between phase 1 and 2 and between phase 3 and 4 when you have to go to the ledge. Like you lose uptime, and it's again a caster friendly encounter. Fury Warriors, if they want to be the king of Wrath of Lich King, guess what they are, because there's a lot of little cleave that they get to benefit from. The Lich King fight, like heroic Lich King, a good Fury Warrior is always going to be number 1 on details. Maybe not number 1 on boss damage. They might lose boss damage to a feral, and especially lose boss damage to a fire mage on Lich King. But they're going to be number 1 on the details meter for sure. Like Fury Warrior is going to still be very dominant on the soft cleave fights.
Fury Cleave is going to be insane. Yeah.
You bring up a really good point that I think people don't think about a lot. I talked about it just on it wasn't on a show, it was just on my stream the other day, is that there's a lot of stuff in boss fights that don't go towards your parse, and Warcraft Logs kind of has to do that because people will try to cheese, but at the same time, like, it can really be a lot different picture on damage meters than on Warcraft Logs. That's something people really have to think about when all of us from back in the day talk about who was the best DPS, because we didn't have Warcraft Logs. Like, we had damage meters, and we had sites that, you could submit them to and stuff like that. But, like, it's a very different picture,
Yeah, RIP World of Logs. But even then, the World of Logs thing too, like right now, like Warcraft Logs filters out damage from tricks, and it filters out damage from Unholy Frenzy / Hysteria, whatever you want to call it. They didn't do that back then. So going back and looking, going back to the Wayback Machine or whatever, which I did a while ago. I made a whole spreadsheet to compare damage from original Wrath, and it's what you would expect. Furies on top, and then combat rogues, and then ferals, and then ret paladins, and then DKs and rets are below that somewhere. But feral's really close to combat rogue, but we don't know based on that data. We have no idea who was getting Hysteria back then. We have no idea. We don't know who was getting tricks. There's no way to know. And also, players now are generally better, more skilled, have had more time to practice than they did back then. People are using different tactics now to do more damage that they weren't using back then, that we've learned about since on private servers and things like that. So the damage breakdown in Wrath Classic ICC is going to be different from the original one, just by default, just because we play the game differently now.
Yeah, I mean, back in the day, we were giving our Hysteria to the Feral Druid, but then usually we were running with 2, 3, maybe sometimes 4 rogues, and the 2 best rogues were trading tricks with each other and not giving it to any warlocks.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? I'm going to give you something, you're going to give me something, right? And so we were dominating, right? So it's just it's very different, because that's a huge buff that's just taken out that you don't see on Warcraft Logs, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, I like the change, and I feel like as a rogue, Feral Druids are kind of like my brothers from another mother type of deal. So
that's a nice way to look at it. You could look at it as, they're all stealing my gear.
No, they just they just feel like a close brother, and my 2 mains are warrior and rogue. So you guys are literally both brothers, So
Ferals both combined, but different.
I think Blizzard. I think Blizzard probably didn't anticipate the buff to be this big. I think they were expecting, I want to say a 300 DPS increase for the highest level ferals, or I think they said maybe on their post 5 to 10%. I think it's more than that, and I think everyone's starting to see it's a little more than that, and I think that's okay. Just let it be. I think people need to at least chill with the overreactions, at least for now. Let's see how it lands in a couple weeks.
Yeah, and also it's like we were talking about before. It's going to be maybe up to a week or even 2 before people fully get used to the new stuff and how to actually play it optimally and things like that. It'll take a couple weeks. They're still fine tuning things in the sim as well. So there's a bunch of stuff that's still kind of up in the air. So it would definitely be worth it to kind of wait until the dust settles a bit before we make any sort of final conclusions about the whole thing, really.
Yeah, I really feel like they can't just they can't change. They need to give it at least a few weeks, right? they can't just change it and then. But I've heard from other people that there's been in retail, there's been emergency changes to a change that they made 2 days prior before or something like that. I don't know if it's true. That's just what I've heard. But so I guess it's not out of the question that they could come in and be like, sorry.
I mean, they could, but I think if they were going to do that, they probably would have already done it, right?
Yeah. I think we just need a bigger sample size, really.
Yeah, definitely. There was something else I was gonna point out.
There's a side note that I thought of but didn't say. It's like the other selfish reason why I don't want ferals to be stacked is because the Vank token's already pretty bloated.
Well, and dude, just like literally Agi gear is like Agi leather is some of the best statted gear in the game for so many classes besides
The actual
rogue
leather
and feral, right? Like there's a lot of people that want to use lots of leather gear because it's just got really good stats. And there's nothing to stop people from having those. So
yeah,
or from using them. So that's a little bit of I'm scared. There was something, dang it, that I wanted to bring up. Yeah, I don't know. Is there anything else you can think of, Rugs, that you'd like to throw in about it?
Yeah, I mean, TableSlam basically just said it. Like the sim still needs to get refined. So just because a sim says something, don't freak out. Like, oh my God, Feral's doing more than a Fury Warrior in ICC. Like that sim isn't even like finished. Like you're just throwing numbers in there.
I still swear to God that sim does not do armor pen properly. I really don't think it does. I have no evidence to back that up, so I could be a complete idiot, but I just when I put stuff in, I feel like, what, dude, because like every point of it gets better at a certain point. Like every point does more DPS going up because you're getting less and less armor. So it's the opposite of the effect you get when you put armor on. You know, like you put armor on, and the more armor you put on, the less and less damage reduction that does. So you take it off as you get down to lower, the more and more you take off with each point because it's percent based. So I feel like it's wrong, but I could be a complete moron. So
the math is definitely weird on it, but it's like, I don't know, math is math. Like if the people who are good at doing the math did the math and they show me the result, I'm probably going to be like, okay. But I mean, yeah, with the sim thing, like they've been working on it, and like just to, obviously like the people who work on the sim, like I love it that they care enough to create a tool like that for the community to use. So like, big props to the people who work on the sims. But like, just as an example, like pretty early on in phase 1, there was a slight discrepancy with the way that it was calculating shred damage, where it would always assume that there was a mangle or trauma on the target for every single shred, because we have a talent that boosts it and everything. Or not the talent, it's the actual ability mangle and trauma boost the damage that shred does. So for a while, the sim was telling you to use your pre-pull omen proc on a shred instead of a mangle or a rake. And for a while, that was like the information that I was working on. I practiced my opener with a shred instead of mangle or rake, but it turned out that the sim was assuming mangle always on. So eventually, like they fixed it. They fixed the sim. They were pretty quick to fix it and everything like that. But it just goes to show that like the people who create the sim, as smart as they are and as good as they are as at what they do, they're human. And every once in a while, a mistake slips through the cracks. They do their best to fix it as fast as they can. But this change has been out for a few days. Give them time to tighten up the sim. Give us time to tighten up the rotation and to see how it feels, and then we'll make final conclusions in like, I don't know, another week or two.
Right.
Okay. Has there been any questions in chat we can hit, or does anybody in chat want to ask any questions before we start wrapping up? Or
I definitely think that the feral adjustment and buff is healthy for the game. Like feral players were probably a little too low on the meters than they should have been overall. So this is a good thing, just like the ret change was a good thing. Although once they made the ret change, they did kind of open up the can of worms, and now everyone's going to be like,
that's what I wanted to talk about.
Pick me. Like, I want to change, like fix my class, buff me.
That's what I wanted to talk about. I forgot.
Definitely like probably the most important, like first in line, like most played class, most brought to raid class that needed a little glance at for sure. But we need to be careful about like buffing everyone like this. There's definitely like a line that needs to be drawn. I think Blizzard did a pretty good job with this one. I think they directionally had a good decision with what they did. So let's see how it plays out.
Yeah, I think balance is the most important thing, right? Like it's also one of those things where like we have to remind ourselves that like just because another class got buffed doesn't mean anything negative for us. It just means that they got buffed. You know what I mean? Like, and it's kind of the same thing with Ferals. Yeah, Ferals got buffed. That doesn't mean anything. That they didn't nerf anybody else. It's not like there's only a limited amount of power that can be divided between all the classes or whatever. You know, just because a class got buffed doesn't mean that, you know, it's a bad thing for your class or whatever. If anything, it's good because it shows, like you said, they open the can of worms. Now they've shown that they're willing to make necessary changes for balance or to adjust things to be more like they were in original Wrath and things like that. But yeah, definitely something to keep in mind.
Yeah, I feel like
do you think there's any other classes or specs that deserve a buff other than Ret and Feral?
I guess it depends on what Blizzard thinks each spec is for. You know what I mean? Like, Frost Mage isn't doing a ton of damage except for on like Vezix. But like, does Blizzard want that to be a PvE spec, or is that supposed to be the PvP spec? You know, the same thing with Arms. Arms traditionally was always the PvP spec, but then they added some talents into the Arms tree that made it seem like it was supposed to be for PvE also, and then they kind of just let it be bad at PvE, but it's still really good in PvP. So it's like, what does Blizzard actually think each spec is supposed to be for? Like, I think Arms probably should get something, maybe.
Well,
if
that's
Blizzard
why
actually wants it to be PvE, like they should get something.
I think that's why eventually in retail they started making things that were like changes that were completely different on PvE to PvP side, because you buff Arms right now and they might start really smacking in PvP. You know, like it's really hard to think of ways to buff that won't hurt. You know, like they've got a real good puzzle, and they're a small team, and we're a huge bunch of degenerate gamers and a lot of really smart people. I'm not talking about me, but a lot of really smart people that figure out some weird ass shit, and they're gonna break lots of the stuff that they try to fix. So that is, it's a good point about what do they think it should be used for.
So for like specifically going out of the way to buff any class, like the classes at this point that come to mind are all the like weird specs or PvP specs, like Bob said. I'm thinking Frost Mage, Sub Rogue, BM Hunter, Demonology Lock, Blood DK DPS. Like going out of your way to specifically buff something of all the classes and specs that I just mentioned doesn't actually make the game reach a substantial like health, a level of health that's much better than where we're at right now, because every single one of those classes that I just said have 2 DPS specs that are more than viable in the current meta. Every single one of them. The only thing
that's the difference, because I mean, I think Boomy is good for a druid, but there's a difference between like caster versus melee, right? So if somebody really wants to play melee, they don't want to be a Boomy. But like if you're going back between like Frost and Fire Mage, like come on, get over it. Like you can choose fire and you'll be fine. Like
the only exception to that rule of like a custom buff is a bug fix. If there is something that is genuinely bugged, that deserves attention, no matter who you are, what meme spec you play. Absolutely, get a bug fix to happen. But custom buffs like what Feral just got and what Ret just got like 2 months ago, those need to be extremely, extremely limited, only to classes that we think genuinely like would need it in the current meta.
Yeah, I saw KPT say something in chat too about Fury Warriors, about Titan's Grip, how that 10% damage nerf was only added in ICC after they got Shadowmourne. So like that's the problem with running with like 3-3-5 balance.
I did. Like, so that was a thing that they just like the nerf to paladins because of the 2 set.
Yep, exactly.
Got
so that's the problem with running with 3-3-5 balance, not in the patch that 3-3-5 was introduced, because we don't have the gear that was in 3-3-5. So the classes that got nerfed because they were too powerful in actual 3-3-5, they're still running. They've been running with those nerfs the whole time. So like Ret Paladins were really bad for a long time because they were running with the nerfs that were necessary because of the gear that they had, but they don't have that gear in phase 1. Same thing with Fury Warriors. They're running with the nerfs that were in place because Shadowmourne and Hardcapped Armor Pen was too much damage, but they don't have Shadowmourne or Hardcapped Armor Pen in phase 1. So like that's kind of the weird thing about running with final patch balance with not final patch gear. And I'm curious to see how things change going forward now, because now some of those damage specs have been brought up a bit in damage. So like we'll see what happens once ICC actually comes out. Like, is Blizz going to tune those back to what they were before? Like, are they going to take those buffs away because now the thing that they got nerfed for is back or whatever? Like, I don't, I probably could have said that in a more comprehensive way, but like, you know what I mean, right? Like, if once we get to ICC, we'll see. Like, we'll see what Blizzard thinks they feel they need to do to make it actually be good again, like in terms of balance.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of like that they're doing this types of changes. So, yeah, I think the only people who really are mad about the Ferals getting buffed is people who don't like the Feral Druid in their guild, and they've been enjoying watching them suffer. And now they're not, and they're just like, man, this is bullshit, dude. It's like, no, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. We do have a question from chat from Grifton. Does any class need to be nerfed? And so let me see. I'll tell you. We need to nerf.
Yeah, Feral Druids? No,
we need to nerf Assassination Rogue, Unholy DK, Affliction Warlock, and Fire Mage, and that will be perfect. And then Combat Rogue will reign supreme. No, in all seriousness, does anything need to be?
I mean, they've kind of already nerfed Unholy DKs.
Yep.
They went out of their way to custom nerf Unholy DK. The same way that
was that a fix?
It was a nerf.
Because like the pets, well, yeah, like in effect, it's a nerf for sure. But like the pets were acting like they did on Mop, not the way that they did in Wrath. The Mop pets attack faster, so they just switched it back to the pets attacking the way they did in original Wrath. So like, yeah, their damage went down. But like, was that enough? Was it enough to, because it's running on Legion client or whatever. So some like little weird mechanics have snuck through the cracks or whatever. And that was one of them. And they fixed it. But like, was it enough? Like, are they still doing too much damage? Because Unholy DK players are way better now than they were back then.
Yeah, but.
Yeah.
I mean, you've played a DK though, Rugs. Like you actually have, like, I think you play Frost, right?
Yeah,
I played Unholy.
I have a Frost DK, but yeah, in my opinion, what they did to Unholy DKs was already enough of a nerf, and they're still currently like topping meters. You could go back and look at this last week, all bosses, they're up there with Affilok. They're like right there with Affilok. They're still in the top 2 for all DPS. So I do feel like what they did to Unholy DKs is more than enough of a nerf already. That feels like it was still done with the health of the game in mind, that I don't think that any other classes deserve any other nerf or need a nerf by any means.
I'll say it. So, but this is a really weird hot take that I've had for forever, but
get ready.
I would actually like, I don't think it needs to happen, but in my perfect world, Unholy would get a nerf.
Again?
And just, a slight one, and maybe Frost also. I feel, well, okay, but here, this is the reason. I feel that any hybrid class shouldn't ever be like the top DPS. I feel like if your class can only DPS, you should be the top, and hybrid classes should always be a little bit lower. But I know it feels bad when you can be a class that has so much versatility with dual spec that like, I just feel like the pure DPS classes should just be the best DPS. But I know it's not the way that the majority of people want to play. But
I definitely see where you're coming from.
yeah, but I wouldn't actually, if that's just the way I would build a game if I was going to make one from the ground up. But here, I don't think I would nerf anybody.
Yeah, I mean, well, James in chat is right too. Like the scaling for Unholy is different than it is for the other melee. So after a while, like with enough extra item levels and more stats on gear and stuff like that, Unholy probably won't be top anymore after a while. They'll still be up there. They'll still be really good, but they won't be like top anymore.
Yeah. I mean, in a perfect world, you get everybody to have their chance to shine throughout an expansion, right?
Next time Bob gets one of those crazy ideas, Mel, you rein that in, okay? Get in the butt real quick.
Oh man!
You see something like come from the other room, just like toss it his head.
Yeah.
Any last questions from chat? Anybody there? Speak now or send these guys a Discord DM. Oh, hero class, huh? I hate that they called them that. I hate that. It was like, how can we say this? How can we introduce a new class and make everybody want to play them? Like when we were leveling in Wrath, everybody I ran into was a DK, and I was like, how are you gonna get in a raid, bro? Like,
yeah, you see in Hellfire Peninsula, you see LF2M Blood Furnace need tank and healer. You join the group as a healer. It's 3 DKs in the group with you. None of them want a tank.
Yeah. Well, chat, you got any last things? We are about to. Oh, we do have one question. What happened to Scotty J? Scotty had sick children and had to take care of them and was not able to come. But I think you guys have done this plenty of justice, and
but he already abandoned his Feral, so he was just like, well, I can't go on and talk about how they just made Feral better. Last week I was talking about how Feral sucked.
Yeah, he's not even Feral main. He's a paladin and Shadow Priest main. Jeez.
That's what I'm saying. He abandoned his Feral.
Love you, Scotty.
Oh man. Ask Ruggs about his elbow. How is his elbow?
Oh my god, you did not just read that.
I don't even know. Okay, is it not something you should explain?
No, it's just some stupid inside joke with our raid team. They always ask me how my elbow is.
Oh god.
Okay, well. All right, does Hysteria completely exclude from logs or still count in dots? No, it's not there because it's a percent base, right?
Yeah, they factor it out.
I know for sure Trix is not in there. Like can't you find it, but it's just not attributed to any person in the raid. I think you can still find it as like how much Trix damage was done.
Logs. Yeah, like how much damage was dealt to the boss as a result of Trix being on somebody.
Yeah, and the only person.
But power infusion's still there, so love your priest, you know?
Yeah.
Saying.
Okay, so technically Trix and Hysteria are still in there, like technically,
because the damage all has to add up to 100%. They just take that damage away from the player that got the buff and then just put it separate. That's all they do.
Yeah, but there's one class that does get a little bit of damage on from Trix and Hysteria. That is warriors, because they actually get, the more damage they do, they gain more rage. So that is a thing too, right?
Oh, you talk about the damage that Hysteria does to you when you have it on, because it takes some of your health.
No. Well, because they get more rage based on damage.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
They do get a little bit more rage. So technically there is one class that gets a little bit of something on logs. All right, I think that's it, guys.
I have one idea that I wanted to recommend. I want to bounce it off of Ruggs and see what he thinks of this one. This is like Turbo Sweat stuff. So like have a rogue, a warrior, and a feral druid all farm dig rats, right? You trade drop and dig rats before boss fights. The rogue has a macro that cheap shots and stops attack so that they get the combo points from cheap shot but don't kill the dig rat. The fairy fires the dig rat, and then the warrior kills the dig rat. The feral starts with a pre-pull omen proc. The rogue starts with 2 combo points for pre-pops, slice and dice, and the warrior starts with extra rage. What do you think?
That sounds pretty sick. Not gonna lie, I kind of like it, but rogues can already start pre-pull with max combo points with their subtlety shenanigans. So
yeah, with pre-med and all that.
Yeah. No, it's the healing talent when their sub spec. If they get heal crit, they get combo points on their target, so they can start with 5 combo points as is. So that's already. Forget the rogues, but yeah, I'm right there with you, man.
Dude, I've done.
Forget the rogues.
That is the like. There's, dude. I've done subtlety to soak and on alkaline, and that is the weirdest spec. You're just like, where did I get 5 combo points? That just came out of nowhere. Like, what just happened?
Yeah.
Oh, it's hilarious, man. All right, well. Rugs has given us some custom outro music. Well, wait, hold on. I need to sign us off first. All right, guys, we're going to start winding down the show, but do not leave because we have a treat for you here at the end, courtesy of Rugs. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at WC Reloaded. You can follow the Mash Those Buttons Network at the Mash Network. If you want to send us an email, do so by sending to wcrpodcast@gmail.com. If you'd like to interact with the host of this show or any host on the Mash Network, go to mash.gg/Discord. If you want to find every place that you could listen to the show, watch the show, go to warcraftreloaded.com. All of the links are there, and that is our webpage too. And then help the podcast by, you guys are killing it on audio, but we could do to grow on YouTube. So give us a like, subscribe, throw a comment, and I love the ones that say, today, Junior. Those are the best ones. So yeah, give us whatever you want. It all helps, whether it's hate or not. It helps the algorithm. So. Yeah, help us out with that, and Patreon too. But you can find all of those links at warcraftreloaded.com. Mel, where can we find you?
You can find me on this show every week, usually, maybe not. You can find me raiding on Bob's stream on a very good Discipline Priest or on a very bad Prot Pally.
And Table, where can we find you?
On YouTube, I'm just at TableSlam, youtube.com/@TableSlam. And on Twitch, I am twitch.tv/table_slam.
Yep, that's my.
And I'm also on Maincrick now. If you want to find me in game, my name actually is TableSlam now. It used to be Ladder Slam, but now it's actually TableSlam on Maincrick.
Nice.
There you go.
Nice. All right, and Rugs, where can we find you? And when can we expect the next video?
Oh, I don't know about the next video, but I'm on YouTube. I'm Rugs on YouTube. I'm going to try to get us something out here pretty soon. Hopefully I can stop avoiding these technical difficulties. I'm on Twitch, RUGSZ on Twitch. I'll be streaming tomorrow night doing a GDKP on my main Feral. Probably a crappy GDKP, but my main Feral, first time since the buff. So that'll be fun to mess around with that.
Nice. All right. And you can find me on Twitter at Blazin_Bob. That's BLAZZIN_BOB. You can also find me on Twitch and this show live at BlazinBob. Let's roll this outro music and see you guys next week.
From kitty to lions, Feral's DPS is now flying. No more Starfall, we just treading now. Going from 15th to 2nd, but Feral's on the meters. Oh, they pumping, yeah. Oh, they pumping, oh, they pumping, oh, they pumping, yeah. Feral's pumping, Feral's pumping, yeah. Use it, shred. Feral's pumping now, Feral's pumping now. Feral's pumping now,
love it.
Crushed it.
Oh, so good, Mr. Wobbles. My availability is yes. Thank you very much for checking out Warcraft Reloaded podcast. Make sure to like and subscribe and hit that bell so you don't miss any future content.